All right, everybody, let's get started. First off, welcome everybody. My name is Neil DeMazier. I'm the Vice President of Sales and Marketing here at Imagine. You are joining us for Imagine Academy Quarantine Sessions number 12. This is actually a two-part webinar. We're doing it today from 2 to 3 p.m. Eastern. We're also concluding it tomorrow from 2 to 3 p.m. Eastern, so hopefully you can join us for both of those. But this one is all about a full arch case. We have a number of folks joining us, and it's going to be a really interesting take on case design, covering everything from selecting material, how to approach a case, but also a lot of kind of the more nuanced aspects of what we do. Good chairside manner. When you go chairside to consult. And you interact with a patient, you interact with a doctor, what are some good ways to conduct yourself to make sure that that experience is as beneficial for all involved as possible? So we're going to be covering a lot of really cool stuff today and tomorrow, and we'll get to it pretty soon here. So a few quick things to cover before we get going. First off, we love these to be really interactive and dynamic webinars. So if you have any questions throughout the course of the webinar today or tomorrow, absolutely ask us in real time. You can post them right in the little Q&A box or the chat box down towards the bottom of your Zoom screen there. I'll be keeping an eye on those throughout the course of the presentation. So when I see some questions come through there, I can take a moment and voice them to the presenter so that we can get everybody's questions answered. So anything that occurs to you that's unclear or you want to learn more about, definitely let us know. We want to hear about it. Two is if you want to see this one again, or you want to see any of the previous 11 quarantine session webinars that we've been doing for the past several weeks here, these are all available on our YouTube channel. Just hop on YouTube and do a quick search for Imagine USA. You'll find us on there, and you'll find 11 other webinars that we've done recently, covering everything from Roland equipment, a lot of exocad stuff, some really great hyperdent tips in there. Digital dentures, a lot of next dent printing, wide variety of topics in there. So be sure to check those out. So without any further ado, I'm going to introduce the panelists that were joining me today, and we're going to get started. So joining me today, I have Ed Lomire, who's a dentist, operates out of Virginia, I believe. He's been using the AmberMill product, which is a really exciting new lithium disilicate product that we're going to be talking about today. He's going to be joining us towards the end of the webinar today to talk about his clinical experience with the AmberMill product. So we're welcoming him. We also have Ryan Lee, who's the managing director for Haas Bio America. Haas Bio is the company that pioneered and produces the AmberMill product in Germany, I believe, but I'm sure Ryan will fill us in on all those details. So Ryan will be joining us in just a few minutes as well. But first we have Ben Mueller, who is a lab owner out of Halifax, Nova Scotia. Ben has been a laboratory technician and doing just beautiful work for, about 15 years now. I know he was trained in Germany, has a lot of great experience, both in the lab, at the bench, as well as in the CAD/CAM process. Particularly in the design phase, but then also in the clinical world, chairside, interfacing with patients and with doctors. So Ben is going to be starting us off today, introducing the case, letting us know kind of some of the details about it and the story behind it. So without any further ado, Ben, I'm going to hand the hosting privileges over to you. Why don't you go ahead and take it away from here? And ladies and gentlemen, Ben Mueller.
Thank you very much, Neil. Thank you very much for having me. And I have to humbly correct you, not a lab owner yet, but maybe one day.
Sorry about that.
No, it's okay. So today, as Neil already mentioned, we're going to be talking about full arch hybrids. In particular about a maxillary full arch hybrid. And the theme of this whole webinar will basically be a little bit about keeping an open mind. And that's why also I picked this title picture. These cases are never, one single unit. There's so many moving parts and factors, you have to keep an open mind. For those who don't know who I am or what we're about, we are Mueller Dental Arts Lab, and we are a small family-owned independent dental laboratory, and we specialize in patient-oriented, patient-focused restorations, trying to make things look as natural as possible, while still, of course, incorporating a certain aspect of artistry. Now, when doing, of course, full arch implant cases, there are so many things that you need to consider. Main thing being, make sure that you have done your homework and that you've practiced on smaller cases. Because the worst thing that is that you dive into these things cold turkey and not know what you're getting into. So one of the biggest things really for us that we have tried to develop and workflows that we have developed is holistic patient guidance. So these workflows, they need to be in place and discussed with the entire clinical team prior to you even attempting a case. That doesn't mean that you only will talk to the treating dentist, but you also talk to have a meeting, in regards to the nitty-gritty of the cases or of the workflows with the assistant and the admin staff of the dental office. Everybody has to be on the same page, because if you are not, it's the worst thing for the patient, because they feel like they're not being serviced properly. They start to lose trust in the entire restorative team. Ultimately, everybody has to be fundamentally on the same page. You have to remember that the patient is the goal. Basically, you can have differences, in terms of, what is artistically acceptable or what is aesthetically acceptable, but ultimately you have to remember that the patient is the one that we're working for. And just like every tooth is different, every patient is different, and you have to simply keep these things in mind and be open. Because ultimately, we're all human beings, and patients are humans, and they want to be treated as such. And that is why there is really no predetermined solution. You have to be flexible. There is no box. I think the majority of us, myself included, are victim that we get swept up in what is new, the hype, around digital, what might be newest material, what might be just coming on the market. And so we have to remember that, we can't just stuff, a patient into a certain slot, into a certain material plan, treatment plan. Embrace individuality. Every patient is different. You have all kinds of crazy things going on in the mouth, and we have to remember that. Not everything is perfect, not everything is mirror image. And even for the people that don't want Hollywood smiles, even if, you can accommodate Hollywood smiles too, and white teeth, but you have to keep things natural looking by introducing nuances and characteristics that make things look natural and unique. And then when you do those things and keep an open mind, unexpected things happen, and you keep that door open to the passion that hopefully is what got you into this amazing industry that we're in. And beautiful things can happen. How do we talk to patients? What are some of the main key things that we try to do, especially with us in our lab? We really try to focus on and remember that, treat patients how you want to be treated. Sit them down and speak on an equal ground, level the playing field, make eye contact. Body language is a huge thing, to try to make them feel comfortable and, receive them with open arms, literally. And, this is our patient room where we see and receive patients. And besides the dental chair and the workbench you see in the back corner there is really nothing else dental related. And, we have nice wood floors. I'm not saying that everybody needs to do this, but we try to create an atmosphere that is kind of living room-esque. There's a big window out of view of this picture that looks out onto the bay that we're next to here, with this gas fireplace. So we try to do things to make patients feel as comfortable as possible and disarm them, not in a negative way, but in a way that gets them to open up to us when we are talking to them. I personally like to pull up a chair and sit across from them, truly listen, to try to establish that bond, that trust. Who are they? What do they like? What are they afraid of or nervous of in regards to the treatment plan? Or, if something else comes up, great, because, that way you get to figure out who they are as a person. So often do these cases come with psychological aspects, We're not just anymore, a dentist or a dental technician. we are, sometimes psychologists in a way, and by no means do I say that, we treat the mental aspects of the case, but you have to take them into account, because if you don't, the patients will feel very unsure of this entire treatment. Individual expressionism of a patient. Listen to what they want. Are they artistic? Are they somebody who has certain requests for how their case looks? Do they bring in pictures? Listen to that, because again, we work on cases every day. I as a dental technician, I get a case into the lab, I get it on my workbench, and it's, so to speak, the next case. But we have to remember, it's not just a case. Same thing with the dentist. It's not just a name in a patient chart. These are human beings we are treating, and so this was our vampire enthusiast, for example. This is not a full arch hybrid, but nevertheless, this is lithium disilicate 3-unit bridge, and he was really into that kind of subculture and kept repeating, that he would like to have a vampire tooth, and he was fine that it was only unilateral on the one side. And at the time when we first met him, we were hesitant about it because, of course, we didn't know what his bite was like and his function was like. But lo and behold, he had received some trauma to his joints, and every time he moved into that side shift and slow side movements, he cleared that canine completely. And the other side, of course, as you can see, is a different story. It's completely worn down. But again, just to demonstrate, keep things unique. Give patients what they want within their realms of possibility. How do you gather those building blocks? Have a holistic approach to analog and digital. Everything nowadays is about digital. How can we digitize things? What's the next thing that we can print? And don't get me wrong, that is all great stuff. They're great tools, but we cannot forget that analog still has a strong foothold. And how we like to work in our little lab here is to try to pick and choose the strong points of each technology, whether it's analog or digital. Take as many notes as possible. Sketches, drawings, photography. Try to be as detailed as possible, whether you do really take the time and do a little watercolor, or you take different photos. And again, of course, this is not what you will do when the patient is there, but it's just to showcase. Try to see what's on the inside, not just of the oral environment, but try to peer in between the lines of what the patient is telling you, to try to figure out what it is that they need. And of course, I, for example, like to use colored pencil a lot. I have a template of a central and a lateral and a canine, and I color that in depending on what I see, and or what the patient might be telling me. Of course, when we have a full mouth restoration, we don't have necessarily teeth that we can take notes of or colors, but that's why it's nice to have a portfolio of what you may have done in the past, and you can browse that with the patient, or you can give it to the patient to take home, to look at it with the leisure, to think about it, because a lot of the time patients don't know what they want. And I, for example, one of the nice things that I learned and picked up from some other lectures that I came across, ask for pictures or photographs of when they were younger, when they maybe still had their dentition, or if they never had dentition, like our patient that we will soon meet. She didn't have her teeth since she was 16, so there really was no photo documentation from back then. And so I got her to bring in some, what we sometimes do is we get patients to bring in photos of family members that look similar, just to get an idea of how we can recreate their face truly. Shade matching software moving forward, will be a huge thing, especially with COVID-19. We were very lucky so far that we were able to see patients in our lab. I feel like that will be something, especially in the immediate future, that will not be taking place, unfortunately. And so, having these shade matching softwares available to us, where we can have software help us in terms of telling us how close we are in regards to a shade match, or telling us certain colors that we need to create a certain lifelike case, will be a huge help. And whether it's we use it as a tool for myself as a lab to teach something to a dentist, or the dentist learns these shade matching softwares and then gives us the tools that we need. Because ultimately, if we can't take photos anymore of the patient, since we cannot see them, now the dentist will be responsible to give us the info that we really need. And of course, that comes with then investing proper photography equipment. Now, an iPhone is great, but at the same time, I always look at iPhone photos as a diagnostic tool, like diagnostic impression. It can be good to kind of tell us a little bit what's going on, but to get the nitty-gritty of what's really required, get a proper camera, proper flash setting. Because again, taking shortcuts at this stage, you will lead to ultimate disappointment and really failure. And there's nothing worse than having a patient who's disappointed at the end. It doesn't matter how good the case looks in the end. If the patient felt like you were not there 100% and you were rushing things and not taking the time, they won't accept the case, and they will always have a bad taste in the mouth, as a metaphor. So yeah, it will really pay you back tenfold if you make the time, whether it's one appointment, or if it means taking overtime to do research on a certain material that you might think might be great for that case. All these things will basically lead to ultimate success. So this is our patient. Her name is Alma, and she came to us as a denture patient. She had a very old denture that is very cookie cutter, very bland looking by now. Of course, it's been probably over polished several times for relines and things like that. And as much as she was a triple lady, as you can see, she still smiled with her eyes very much, but she did not like to show her teeth. And that was one of the things that she kind of commented on, that came clear as I was discussing things with her in the diagnostic phase, that since she was 16, again, like I mentioned, she was a dentureless. So as she was aging and going through the rest of her teenage life and through her young adulthood, and then making a career for herself, she always felt like at the back of her mind, it was something that bothered her, and she couldn't show her teeth. So now, where she was getting close to retirement, it's a new chapter. Turn the page, and she wanted something that she could, she wanted a smile that she could be proud of and show. At the same time, as we even went down that road of making her a new denture initially, it became clear that it was maybe something she didn't want. So instead of forcing and pushing her down that path of continuing of making a new denture, we went down the fixed route, because that was something she was really interested in, and it kind of crystallized out as we were doing all this other diagnostic stuff. Ended up placing 4 implants. There was of course some heavy-duty bone grafting that happened because she didn't have teeth for such a long time, so there was quite a lot of bone missing. The 2 distal implants are zygomatic implants, and the 2 anterior implants were kind of short. And I mentioned that because it plays a little bit into the material choice later on for the framework. Again, slow dentistry is best dentistry. First a preliminary impression was taken to make a custom tray and a cut verification jig, which was then sent out to the clinician to lute together in the mouth. Over that, the custom tray was placed, and the final and verified impression was taken and then sent back to us so that we could make a diagnostic setup. We chose to go the analog route in this sense. Of course, you can do digital as well, but at the same time, again, advantages, disadvantages of digital versus analog. Yes, you can design this digitally and print it out, and that looks great. But at the same time, the advantage of analog is that if you really want to change things chairside, you can just take a hot wax knife, change some teeth around, and see what that looks like. And since Alma had fairly high aesthetic demands, we chose to do that. Also because one of the things she voiced is that she wanted to kind of see, if possible, what things look like already in the diagnostic stage. So we did 2 or 3 different diagnostic try-ins, and you can see here what it looks like, really rebuilding the face. And of course, things were tweaked a little bit, but you can see already the immediate change. from before, and then with the setup in place. Once that is done and we know where the teeth go, we design for what, I kind of like to, or I kind of heard this term in a lecture from a while ago from Richard Greenlees. He's a denturist out of New Zealand, amazing guy and amazing technician, but he brought this kind of to my attention, this term of oral architecture. It's not just an arch, it's not just a crown. You're designing something that's part of the human, it's part of the face, it's part of the entire fabric of the oral cavity. And so, again, the highlighting, is patient-oriented treatment, not material-oriented treatment. And for us in the lab, for full arch hybrids with thimble bar frameworks, we kind of have this 1, 2, 3, 4 option approach. Where pectin, which is a high-performance polymer, we always try to go with pectin because it's a polymer that is very similar to cortical bone and human dentine in terms of compressive strength. So it acts like a shock absorber between the occlusal forces and the implants. If for some reason the case is compromised and the parameters of pectin cannot be upheld, then we choose something more rigid that is still more shock absorbing, but way more rigid, i.e. titanium. Again, because titanium in second place, because it's more biocompatible than, maybe let's say some other metal alloys that are out there. Again, both pectin and titanium, they're implant grade. So amazing tissue response. And then fourth option, zirconia. Again, it's not saying that zirconia is a bad material. It's just for these type of scenarios, cases. For us, zirconia is the last choice. Again, it's a very rigid material. All forces, occlusal forces, get transferred immediately to the implants. And we've just seen other cases that have come into our lab from elsewhere that have, after 5 years, have severe wear where porcelain has sheared off or fractured off, or the zirconia itself frame has broken because it couldn't withstand the constant abuse of the occlusal forces. And worst case scenario, even peri-implantitis, implants start to fail because it's just nothing safeguarding anything. So just things to think about. In terms of crown material selection, lithium disilicate is our number one option, and it looks amazing, whether it's monolithic, especially for the posterior, or layered in the anterior. The nice thing is you can bond it, which is a huge asset when working with pectin, because you can bond directly to pectin. It becomes chemically one. Other metal alloys are cool too, especially when you want to really customize things like, put a gold crown somewhere. We've had that before, or in the posing gold crowns, there are gold crowns present, and the patient or the clinician asks to have the similar material in the posing, and you can use that. And then of course, zirconia as well, again. For Alma, we chose to go with a titanium thimble frame with lithium disilicate crowns. And I'll start off with, we started digitizing the case. Once everything was approved in terms of the diagnostic setup, we scanned everything in on our DOF Freedom HD scanner, and basically meshed everything together and started designing the thimble frame into the diagnostic setup. One thing I want to, or two things, if there's anything that you can take away from this in terms of thimble frame design, is when you design your preps, make sure that, Neil, can people see my mouse?
Yeah, you're looking good. Yep.
Yeah. That you do not place the margin of your prep design at your gingival margin of your diagnostic setup. What will happen is then when later, because since we wrap the frames in pink composite down the road, you want to be able to cover the 1 to 2 millimeters of the gingival margin in composite so that you get a true seal. You cannot do this if, well, you can do it if you leave it at where the gingival margin is on the diagnostic setup, but then of course your entire clinical crown becomes even shorter. So you have to make sure that you make the prep longer so that when you make your crowns that they're actually 1 to 2 millimeters longer than what your actual clinical crown will be, so that you can sink those margins below the tissue that you will later on layer. Other good point is to make sure that you have nice defined margins in your prep design. That way, when you go to generate the crowns, when you go to set the margins, it just snaps nicely to the margin. You don't have to set everything manually by hand. It just, you can do that of course too, but it just speeds up the process. And then of course you just, and of course you finish snapping the rest of the anatomy to your scan of the diagnostic setup.
Actually, one thing I think we can note here real quick, Ben, since you're talking about thimble design, I know the folks over at ExoCAD did a pretty significant improvement to the thimble design aspect of the software for the 2.4 PlovDiv release.
Yes.
If that's, I don't know if you used 2.4 PlovDiv for this design, but if anybody's looking for a webinar that's a little bit more focused on thimble design in 2.4 PlovDiv ExoCAD, our Quarantine Academy session 5 covered that really well. So anybody who's interested in thimble design specifically, you can look back at that one.
Yeah, that's an excellent point, Neil. Yeah, they did a big update there. So it definitely simplifies things moving forward. Also, when it comes to making the crowns immediately afterwards and things like that. Then again, of course, once the framework is finished design, you can, of course, if you have a mill in-house, or if you don't, like for example, we are a small lab, so of course we don't have all the fancy gadgets that are available, just even from a cost point of view. So it's important to partner with people like Imagine to outsource certain things if you can't do them in-house. So get your titanium frame milled, get it back. We did in this case, and we also made little bite jigs to verify that our mounting and the articulator was still accurate, and that we didn't have to change anything on the titanium frame. And you can see in the radiograph there how compromised the case truly is, and why we chose titanium. Those cantilevers are quite long and too long to use for pectin. And just where everything is in compromised bone, grafted bone, we wanted to give her something that was really rigid like titanium, but still had some capability of absorbing occlusal forces. Once we had that all verified, we scanned everything back in, and it basically became scanned the framework back in, and it basically became a crown and bridge case. And this is again where it comes back to the point of having nicely defined margins. The wizard does a great job in ExoCAD of finding that margin, and with proper order creation setup of anatomic wax up, so you can just merge the design of your diagnostic setup to the crown, and everything's basically ready to rock and roll. And for her, of course, I then ended up doing a custom cutback because she did request higher aesthetics in the anterior 6. So for today, basically, takeaways. Keep an open mind. When you first see the patient, have a roadmap in place and know how to read it. Gather all your puzzle pieces before creating the puzzle. For those of you who have toddlers, like myself, there's nothing worse than having a puzzle and you can't finish it because some pieces are missing. So it's very important to gather all your puzzle pieces beforehand, in all facets, from the clinical point of view, from the technical point of view, and from the patient point of view. And then again, probably the most important point, have a patient-oriented treatment, not a material-oriented one. And that's where then in the end, the case will shine. That's it for today. The rest will be continued tomorrow. If you have any further questions, ask Neil, email Neil, or you can also take a screenshot of this and reach out to myself if you want directly. And I'll hand it off back to Ryan, I believe. Correct, Neil?
Yeah, beautiful. So hand it on over to Ryan. Everybody, like Ben said, he's going to be continuing his aspect of the presentation tomorrow to show us kind of finishing off in the aesthetic way of the case. But right now we're going to be switching over to Ryan Lee, who I introduced earlier, Managing Director of HosBio America, a company that is based actually over in South Korea, not in Germany, as I said earlier. So apologize for that, Ryan. But Ryan's going to give us an introduction to the AmberMill material, which is the material that we chose for the lithium disilicate crowns for this case. And what I find really interesting about AmberMill is the fact that you can actually get a variety of different translucencies out of a single given block. So as materials go, it's a pretty unique one. So I'm interested in learning more about it. Ryan, are you there? Can you hear us? Go ahead and turn on your audio and your video.
Okay, thank you for introducing about me and my company. Thank you, Neil, again. So it was great presentation. Yeah, Ben, pretty impressed about it.
We actually have a question here before you even get started. Ryan, this is from attendee Adam. He's wondering, will AmberMill and AmberPress be available in Canada? Which, good point. This is actually material that's available in the US, but not approved by Health Canada yet. Ryan, is that something you guys are working on?
Yeah, we are trying. So we are trying to find this suitable great partner in Canada. So trying to get into the Canadian market soon. So then next time, so we can have another time with the band together. Yeah.
There you go. So Adam, if you know anybody that might be a good partner for AmberMill up there in Canada, let us know, and maybe you can help Ryan get it into Canada there.
Okay, thank you. So I'm gonna introduce my company, what is Haas Corporation shortly, and about the AmberMill. So we have the company is the name of the Haas Corporation. We are located in the headquarters located in South Korea. So its full name is the Human Aid System Supplier. So we call it Haas. So our manufacturing side, the headquarters, we started our manufacturing business from 2008. It's over 10 years. We grew up from the South Korea and Asian market and Middle East and the European market. So recently, we started in the US business from last 2015. So we're located in Fairfax, in Virginia State. So yeah, here is the company information around the world. So US office is in the Fairfax, Virginia, and European office in Frankfurt, Germany. And our R&D and sales office is in Seoul, and headquarters site manufacturing factory is the east coast of South Korea. So we have 4 locations, as I mentioned. Also, we have the 91 business partners around the world. Also, we have the over 50 the people of the KOL. So the AmberMill, we can say it is nano lithium disilicate, basically glass ceramic material. So why we can say it is nano lithium disilicate? So I can introduce it later. So it looks like this. We have now it is single block is available. So disc, lithium disilicate disc is going to release in the market. I hope, sooner or better. Soon, the sooner is the better. So AmberMill is the main concept that we can say it is the freedom of translucency. So user can select their wishful translucency based on the firing temperature. When we after finish the millet, so when we crystallizing through the oven, so based on the firing temperature, it can be changeable, the translucency. So it is pretty helpful to the user. So the first thing is to minimize their inventory. So the user doesn't need to purchase each translucency of the shade. So for example, so we don't have to purchase the HTA1, MTA1, LTA1. So just we can purchase the AmberMill A1, that we can get the HT, MT, LT, also the medium opaque from the one package of the block. Also, the other point is the user friendly. So the co-firing is available. So milling and staining and glazing and firing together at the same cycle. So it is available to reduce the time. Also, I already told you it is the nano lithium disilicate technology. So it means it has a particle size much smaller than the other lithium disilicate. So it is pretty good. We can get the pretty good result for the aesthetic point. So after we finish the milling, so just a pre-polishing and just the firing, it could be okay. So without then staining and glazing. So the photo of the right side. So after we just finish the polishing, so we can see the after firing, just the polishing only. So it looks nice. Yeah, also it is the physical information. So before firing, it has 250 megapascal, and after firing, it has over 450 megapascal in means. So some other products can say it is the pretty stronger. It is something different from the testing method. We just 450 means it is the minimum flexural strength. So we can say it is 450 or more or stronger, more stronger. And it is structure, microstructure. So as you can see, so it has the pretty smaller nanoparticle size structure of the AmberMill. And aesthetic result, yeah, it was the left side of the photo is just a finish the millet. So from the bluish side and yellowish side from one block. So it has a pretty nice beacon based on the view angle. We can see it is the bluish and yellowish. So it is very nice to get something kind of natural aesthetic result. Also, it is available. Firing time is the shortest time is 16 minutes. It is available. So it could be no problem for the same day crown from the Chairside. Also the left side. So when we need to fire as soon as possible, then you can choose the rapid fire cycle. It could be available with 60 minutes, and the staining and glazing same cycle available. Then, yeah, pretty nice for the reducing the firing time. Yeah, it is available shade, totally 19 shade available from bleaching 1 and up to the D4. So it is the kind of one, yeah, the case photo of the AmberMill. Yeah, this is the short introduction of the company and AmberMill. So yeah, my slide is over here. So I'm gonna hand over the next host to the Dr. Edward Lomire.
Beautiful. Thank you, Ryan. And I know Dr. Lomer's had a lot of clinical experience with the AmberMill products, so I'm looking forward to hearing some of his experiences there. Like I said, one of the things that's most compelling to me about it, I mean, just the fact that you can get any of the 4 standard translucencies out of a given block. I mean, I might be thinking about this too simplistically, but I think that should allow any lab or clinic to kind of reduce their inventory of lithium disilicate by about 75%, right? I mean, you can reduce it pretty dramatically and still be able to get the clinical results that you're after.
Yeah, it is.
All right, Ed, are you there? Can you hear us? If so, go ahead and turn on your audio and your video, and we're interested to hear your clinical experience with the AmberMill as a restorative product.
All right, I got my young guy here starting this up for me.
There you go. We can see you just fine.
All right. So hopefully I can run this. All right, he's showing me what buttons to press. Anyways, I have been using the AmberMill. Ryan and I met way back, and I think I'm probably the first doc in the US and to use it. So Ryan and I go back to day one. And I have somewhere, I'm going to say probably 2,000 of these in the mouth, give or take. From full coverage, veneers, inlays, onlays, and implants. So it's quite versatile, utilizing, for all your clinical needs. Let's see if I can go to the next one here. Like I said, I'm not real good at this computer button stuff. There we go. For your clinical requirements, like, obviously aesthetics is always a concern. And AmberMill covers that beautifully because of the shading and the ability to choose your translucency. Also, the strength being, as Ryan mentioned, 450 millipascals and above. And it's a very reliable product. Two of its properties that we like very, very much so from the aesthetics department is the fluorescence and the opalescence. And as we all know, enamel has both of those properties. And Haas has done a fantastic job in the manufacturing of adding these two properties. As you can see from the little icon that's on your screen there, how the amber glow comes through from whatever light source you're using. The other aspect is the co-firing of this product makes it great for chairside and of course for the lab side as well. You can stain and glaze and fire or crystallize all at the same time. So there's a time savings. And the fact that we have one block and 4 translucencies, you can choose. And the other aspect with the 4 translucencies, you can refire and change the translucency should you need to do that. So you don't have to remill another block. And we find that really useful, chairside particularly. Although I don't refire often like all. But the ability is there should you need to do that. And like I say, the flexural strength is 450. It's just awesome from that department. And for the machinability, those nanocrystals, they just knock this block right into the stratosphere. Under the microscope, you can see the edges of these, like say on a veneer, you can go down to 0.2 of a millimeter and machine these down. And under the microscope, I'm going to say as close to zero as possible chipping. It's very, very smooth. Now, we don't recommend utilizing a feather prep of any kind, say on a molar or any hard-bearing tooth. But for veneers and maybe the facials of your anterior restorations, you can feather them down and feel comfortable. You're not going to have chipping, and you're still going to have some strength. My go-to is usually like a 1.2 millimeter reduction. That's kind of standard. Maybe molars, I'll go back and I'll do 1.5. And again, depending from a clinical perspective, look at your patient and how did they break the tooth? Why did it require a crown? Are they a bruxer? So you can adjust your margin a little bit if you think you want a little bit more, but 1.5 seems to be a great number for us, as a maximum. reduction. You also, when you're doing the reduction, you want to make sure that you don't have like pointed sharp line angles, and that's pretty much true, I think, with most restorations. But you know, smooth those down a little bit, and you're good to go. There's a couple little pictures. These are ones we just grabbed out of the our file today, and you can see that number. I believe it's number. Let's say it's 5. Yeah, he's telling me it's number 5 because these were taken in a mirror, and you can see that the existing restoration had fractured. And you can see the prep obviously in the next one. And this person was sort of a bruxer. So I went on this bicuspid and I did a full 1.5 millimeters reduction. And the other picture that we can see right about here, it was a try-in. This is the uncrystallized. And if you go over here, there we go. For our finished product. And I'm going to say that this was more than likely, shade-wise, I don't have it in hand, but I'm going to say that's an A2, and we probably fired that in an MT. In fact, I'm pretty certain that that was fired at an MT. There are 2 firing schedules. We'll talk about that later in part 2 of this webinar. Here's another one. You can see the tooth, 24, I believe it is here, was browned out. This happened to be a cancer patient, and she asked me after she had all her treatment. She, you know, just mentioned that she had this brown tooth, and she, you know, felt bad about it and all this, and you know, being her story, and she was a great patient. So this was a pro bono case. And not that that takes away from the, you know, the dentistry as far as, you know, quality and whatnot. But the point is we just did a little pro bono for this older lady. And you can see again the prep. And this one's just a little bit supra in the pictures. And part of the reason that I left it like that was she had the inflammation from that, her existing old PFM that had been on there. And I didn't get a picture, you know, 6 months later because of all this situation that we're in. So we weren't able to see just how that gingiva, but I know that it has bounced right back up. And you know, my workflow, obviously, you know, you're assessing your prep and doing the digital. It doesn't matter how you do the digital, but you know, and if you're going to do it chairside, you're going to send it to your lab. It really doesn't matter how that occurs. And design it, mill it. Co-firing's great, and bonding. And I think from a bonding standpoint, I bond everything in my office, although you can cement lithium disilicate. But I think tomorrow webinar we'll talk a little bit, and I'll give you some reasons why you really should just bond and not use the cement aspect. And my friend in Barcelona, Dr. Alan Smelt, has done a fabulous job, and you can see his work right there. And I believe this is rather recent, as of a couple of weeks ago. And I will explain, because we're probably going to get questions, that 6 and 11 are just a little darker. And if you go to his page, he explains why. And this was a patient request. And as Ben said, when a patient says, you know, I want a number 6 darker, I want it longer, you give it to them. It's their money, and this is what the patient wanted. But just take a look at that before and after, and it's just awesome. And in the lower right corner here, Yo Ling, who's one of our ambassadors out on the West Coast, has provided a gorgeous implant, and you can see he had a milled titanium base in this case, and he milled out, you know, the AmberMill, and as he's telling you there, he did it with you know, an A1 and utilized LT translucency, and it would be for something like this, you wouldn't even consider doing an HT. You're just not going to, you're going to get too low of a value, even though it would be an HT, simply because you're going to get that show through. So you know right off of out the gate that you need to do an LT on a situation like that. So as far as for today, that's kind of what I have to offer. I think there's going to be more tomorrow, maybe with some more cases, and we'll talk about some other things. Ben can probably elaborate, or I'm sorry, Neil, more of what that itinerary is going to be about. And anybody from the doctor side or even the lab side, any questions, Neil can certainly give you my email or contacts. We will answer all your questions. We have a Facebook page strictly for AmberMill that you're free to hop on, and we can approve you, and you can see all the stuff. We have quite a number of members on there, and it's worldwide. So if you have an interest in that, certainly reach out. We'll give you the info. We'll put you onto the site. So that's all I have for right now. I'm going to turn it back to Neil, and he can continue you know, this great webinar.
There we go. Beautiful. Thanks, Ed. I appreciate it. So yeah, as you can, if you can, go ahead and hand the host back to me. That should work fine. And then, yeah, tomorrow we're going to be kind of concluding this case and kind of rounding out the information on both this case and the AmberMill product. So if you can join us tomorrow, again, from 2 to 3 p.m. Eastern, we're going to be starting off with Dr. Lomire here, and we're going to go a little bit more specifically into that firing schedule and, you know, how you change that baking cycle, what temperatures you go to for what times to be able to tease out those 4 different translucencies out of this one single product. So join us for that. We're also going to be handing the baton back over to Ben Mueller. Ben's going to be finishing out this full arch case and give us some of his experience with finishing AmberMill from an aesthetic standpoint and just getting it ready for that final placement and getting it back in the mouth there. So definitely big thanks to my guest today, Ben Mueller, Ed Lomire, and of course Ryan Lee from HosBio America. The 3 of them will absolutely be joining us tomorrow, as I hope you will all be as well. And we will see all of you then. See you then. Thanks again, and take care.